special guest in Scott Allen. Welcome to the show, Scott.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me on the show.
It's my pleasure to have you on. Can you tell people a little bit about yourself, please?
Absolutely. So, yes, I'm Scott Allen, and I'm a content creator, an author, platform builder, and I guess you could say an empire builder. So, I spent the last decade and a half writing and publishing a bunch of books. And my number one thing is to help people build the kind of life that they've always dreamed of having, because that's where I started way back in the day. And I'm still building it. So, I've lived in Japan for about, I think, going on 26 years now, originally from Canada. And how I got here is probably a whole nother story. But yeah, life here is great. And I pretty much spend my days just coaching people, creating content, and the rest of the time I'm probably exercising. So yeah, you got to take care of your health. That's the number one thing.
Absolutely. I'm a big advocate of that. I've been at the gym this morning, tried to do a little bit in the garage. I got a little home gym, so I try and do a little bit in there when I can. Um, how how is Japan? How is living in Japan? How have you kind of adjusted? Because I imagine it's very, very different to the Canadian lifestyle. How have you adjusted to life in Japan?
Yeah, I mean, I moved back here in 90. Well, I moved here in 98. So, you know, it's been an interesting journey. I remember back when I won't give you the whole story, but I mean, back when I first moved here, you know, living in Canada, I mean, I had a really good life there, of course. I just felt like I needed a change. So I just decided to, I don't know, why not move to the other side of the world and see how things work out there. So that's what I did. And yeah, it was an adjustment, but that's what I liked about it. I love building new experiences into life. And that was probably one of the reasons why I moved here, was just to experience something that seemed impossible at the time when it came up with the idea. And when I moved here, I didn't just decide, hey, I'm going to move to Japan. I was actually just going to go traveling the world and, go to Asia and kind of, take a break from work and all that stuff. But I eventually found a job here. So I had a company who hired me, brought me over, and they introduced me to the culture, the language. I got into the language right away. And then that really helped. I think like years later, when like with employment opportunities, of course, making new friends, relationships, everything. So language is certainly challenging, like any language is, but to this day, I'm still studying and hacking away at it. The food is great, and I think where I'm in a smaller city. I'm in between Kobe and Hiroshima, but I'm 10 minutes away from a station that has the bullet trains that can pretty much get you to anywhere in the country within a few hours. I mean, I'm probably about 1,000 kilometers, maybe 800 miles from Tokyo, but I could, it's like a 3 hour. I was gonna say like a plane ride. It feels like you're on a plane, but it's a 3 hour train ride. But it's great. I mean, yeah, the traveling is easy. Food is great. People are great. So and I have a family and everything here now. So, and I've got my business set up. Well, and the good thing about my business is because it's mostly virtual, I can take it anywhere. So
Do you have many clients in Japan, or is it a lot of clients you kind of overseas from where you are?
good question. I don't have any clients in Japan, but I have a publisher in Japan. So they've published three of my books so far. And yeah, they keep me pretty busy with new projects. But most of the coaching clients I have they're actually all over the world. They're in the UK, Canada, US, you name it. But I think I probably spend 20-30% of my time doing the coaching, and then the rest of the time is just, yeah, writing books, creating content. I have a newsletter that goes in every week, so we're creating content for that. And back when I started publishing, it was just writing a book, publishing it on Amazon, writing a book, publishing on Amazon, and that just became the routine. I eventually I still do that, but that's not the only thing. I'm kind of branching out these days and, doing more of the, I think like just building traffic and then creating offers for the traffic. So that may be a different conversation, but just on this journey, like sometimes you start with an intention, and then years later, um, you really have to, I guess, evolve. You have to evolve and change, make changes. And I use a lot of AI software as well, which has really accelerated my business growth too. But yeah, it's been a great journey, I think, for the most part. And I just love publishing books. And but for the most part, I mean, what I really like is teaching people, teaching people the frameworks. So I'll come up with, a certain framework, and it'll either become a book or it'll become a blog post. And from there, that just becomes content for our platform. So,
Yeah, sounds really good. How long does it take you to write a book? Do you write sort of shorter books and get them kind of pumped out, or do you? Because I mean, I know some authors take years to write a book.
mm, yeah, I mean, I could probably do a 30 to 40,000 word book in 2 to 3 months. Actually, that's my average would be about 4 or 5 books a year. But lately, I've been using AI software to do a lot of the outlining and the planning, which really accelerated the process for me. Not so much writing the books with AI software. I'm still doing a lot of that. Occasionally, I've hired ghostwriters who, I brought them on board just to your point, like it could take years to put together, like a set of books or a book for that matter. But I just love moving really quickly. So I'm always looking at, how can I accelerate my growth? So yeah, I hired a ghostwriter, trained that person to write like I did, brought them on board, and then between his work and my work, we managed to put out about like 6 to 8 books a year. And the reason I want to put out that many books is because I believe that the more content that you publish at an aggressive scale, the shorter the time it takes for you to really like leverage your business, right? So as opposed to like doing a book a year or doing two, three, or five a year. About to make a one point that should be very clear though is that the content I believe is like, it's not just garbage. We actually go through it. I go through every line. I check everything, and it goes to the editor, and then we, put it out into the marketplace. So there's certainly a process to it. I think it probably takes more. It probably takes longer for me to go through the book and, read through it, make corrections, and everything than it actually takes to write the book. But that is the challenge. If you I've studied like other authors, let's say like Tom Clancy, for example, or let's see who else. Not Stephen King, but Patterson. Yeah, they've all hired ghostwriters in the past, right? But they were always involved in the process at some point, whether it was the outlining or actually going through and checking the material and everything. So I like to study a lot of the business frameworks that other people use and try to bring them into my business and modify them so that they can work in my business as well. And then that way I can, once I've built a system for that, then I teach other people how to do it. So
Yeah, it's quite interesting actually that you do that. And I suppose whether it's a book or any other content, really, is the important factor is the message that you're trying to get across and the way you're trying to get it across. So how you compile that information and get it put together, that there's probably a lot of different ways to do that. A lot of kind of celebrities use ghostwriters, don't they, when they do their autobiographies and stuff like that. A lot of people use ghostwriters, and and more are using AI to write their books. What's your kind of opinion on using AI to write books?
yeah, interesting question. It's not something I talk about much yet. However, um, I mean, I use ChatGPT every day for like probably 2 or 3 hours, but mostly for writing short form content or creating short form content. And for the books, I use it to brainstorm like to basically to build out the structure for the book. There is another software that I use that's been getting quite a bit of attention lately, and it's called Dibbly.com or Create Dibbly. I started testing it a few months ago, and have to say, it's very impressive. Like what it can already do. Like this, I think is. I mean, whether or not this becomes the future of for authors or not, I'm not sure. But I know a lot of authors are like, I'm never going to use AI for creating my content, and I agree to that to a certain extent. But I also think like, if I were to go back to something Gary Vaynerchuk always says, like, if you're not using AI, you're really, not quoting him, and he didn't say this exactly, but he was basically saying like you're really crippling yourself by kind of like avoiding it. So I love to test a lot of these tools. And so I have been testing the AI tools for, yes, the book writing, but not just having it create content, which by the way, like this Dibbly.com will do that for you. It'll create a 40,000 word book in about an hour and a half or two. But there's a certain way that you do have to learn how to use it effectively. And the other thing is, because I've written 20, 25 books myself, when I use the AI software, I'm able to actually go through and go, nope, that's garbage, that's garbage. I can actually go through and I can take out the stuff that needs to be taken out. Whereas I think if you've never written a book before and you're relying on just that, the temptation would be just to take the information it's giving you, copy it, and throw it together and publish it. And that's, to me, that's not really going to. I mean, I don't see a successful book coming out of that process. So even though I'm just using AI as like, it's a powerful tool, really, right? And for me, like what it used to take me 3 months to do, I can now do in 3 days, and that's really, to me, that's the magic behind this, is that you're buying back a lot of your time by using it, and yeah, and like what same with ChatGPT. I mean, I know a lot of people that aren't using it yet, and that's fine. It's still kind of a new tool. A lot of people aren't, but I think that you have to know, like for me, like I'm always testing to see, um, what it can do. I mean, I'm always pushing the limits, I think, and whenever I come up with whenever I'm met with a problem, it's always like, okay, well, what can ChatGPT do about this? So I come with a lot of prompts, and usually, like, I'm surprised that like the other day I was testing it for cover designs, and actually it creates gives you the cover designs that it was giving me are actually pretty good. So I guess what I'm saying is, like, we have to look at it as like, AI is not going anywhere. It's only going to be, every day. There's just more tools out there that we can use. So I'm always in that area, like looking to, um, build my business at a scale that, um, I want to build it at a scale where if I were just working and doing everything manually, it would be a lot more work, I think. So I want to 100x everything as much as I can. Whether that means creating videos with AI, creating courses with AI, but keeping in mind that there does have to be some creativity involved in that as well. So when I'm using it too much, I can feel it. Like, it's like I do have to, pull back a bit, and I have to go like pen to paper, for example, and I do have to sketch out a lot of my ideas and things like that. But yeah, so there's a process to it, and I think a lot of it just comes down to testing. So I'm always testing things. Not just my temptation, by the way, when I started working with Dibbly, was just to put a book together really fast, because I thought, wow, this is really neat. I've just put together a book in about 3 hours. But you've got to just, take a breather, which I did, and realize, like, okay, I'm going to take a bit more time with this, and just go through it and make sure all the lead material is legit. And of course, I'm going through it, and there's a lot of repetition and stuff like that. So anyway, but I do think like that's only one tool. In the future, like a year from now, who knows where we're going to be? Probably a lot of people are not going to like what I'm about to say, but I think in the future, editors, their job could be at risk. I think for sure. I mean, I'm already using AI software and other software for editing and formatting and stuff like that. So, well, no. Well, yeah, we'll have to see where we're at in a year from now. But all I can tell you is, like, these tools are just going to get better and better. So.
Absolutely. I think especially editing. So I use AI software for editing the show, and it's incredible what it can do. So editing wise, it's almost there. There still has issues and glitches, and you still have to double check, I suppose, to a degree, but it's pretty damn good, to be honest.
Yeah, and I almost look at it as like AI software. I mean, sure, it's digital software, but a year or two ago, we would have been hiring somebody to do these things, and now we're using the software to do it. So, I mean, if you get really good at the software and you build a system for it, you can hire somebody to come in and probably work with the tools to do the work. Or if it doesn't take too much time for you to edit the show with the tool, you might end up doing it yourself. But yeah, that's the thing, is like, it's not just like we're saving money by not hiring people, but we're getting things done faster, and I think it just puts us more in control of the process. So
absolutely, and it's enabled me. So I record a show, or try to, as long as I don't get any cancellations. I try to record a show every day. So every day I record a podcast. I couldn't do that if I had to also do the editing, generate all the show notes and everything else. If I had to do that entire process myself, there's no way I'd be able to do that. But with AI, I can fly through. I can get something edited and ready to publish in an hour, 2 hours, depending on the length of the show. It's incredible. So
yeah. No, I think
Um,
it's exciting times we're living in for sure.
yeah, and all your books are non-fiction, right, Scott?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
So for the most part, they're nonfiction, self-help, personal development books. I don't like to classify them as that, and I don't even like the term self-help because I don't think anybody, it's kind of like it kind of says that we're getting better by ourselves, but actually we all need help, right? So okay, but anyway, yeah, the books are all self-help books, and the reason I started working on those kinds of books is because um, those are the kind of books that really help me to move forward. Like whenever I was stuck in life and I felt like I wasn't growing, I would pick up a personal development book. Maybe it was like a book by Tony Robbins. One of my favorite books is Awaken the Giant Within. I've read, Brian Tracy, Jim Rohn, like, all those books, right? I mean, I believe like, depending on how many of them you read, they can really accelerate your learning and change your way of thought, change your thinking too, and um, I guess create a second brain, if you really, really get into it. So it's not just like, yeah, I mean, I love working on those kinds of books. Originally, I mean, I have created a lot of fiction as well. It's just that when it came down to it, I had to decide, do I want to be a fiction author or a nonfiction author? And my heart just told me to go with the nonfiction works, and that was it. Eventually, though, I will be creating and publishing my fiction books as well because I just love the whole imagination, I think, of creating new worlds and stories and things like that. But it's just a very different writing technique to nonfiction. I'm not saying nonfiction is easier, but there's just if you're trying to do both of those things, that's just a lot, and I've already have I have enough projects already, and thing is, right? I mean, here's the truth. Like, I wasn't expecting when I first started publishing. I really wasn't expecting the nonfiction books to take off. I mean, I was just really, to be honest, it was like a passion project. I just wanted to, fulfill my dream of becoming a published author. So I was even writing way before they had self-publishing. So I started out self-publishing my books, but actually, like, years before that, I was pitching my books to publishers. Of course, I had a few leads, but I didn't get anything accepted. But I think I was getting close. And then when self-publishing came around, probably back in 2012 or 2013, I jumped into that right away just to get my first book out there. But yeah, since then, I've been very fortunate to have the book picked up by a lot of international publishers. So I think one of the books, Do the Hard Things First, is I think it's in 16 languages. So, but that just came about by, I mean, it wasn't planned. It got picked up by some publishers, and then got picked up by some more, and then it gained some more traction in the marketplace. And so outside of the U.S., we've had a lot of success with the books just by getting them into other languages. And the great thing about that is that they usually will buy the rights to your book. They'll do the translations and everything like that. So I don't have to do any marketing for the books. There's really nothing I have to do except, I guess, sign a contract and send them the files. So, but yeah, I'm working now to, form like more relationships with international publishers so we can get the books into, I think the goal is to get them into 40 languages. So,
Wow, that would be amazing.
mm,
How do you find the marketing side of things? Because obviously, if your passion is for writing books and creating the content and the creative side of things, then you've got the whole difficulty of, you could write the best book in the world, but if you can't get it marketed and can't get,
mm,
people in front of the right people, then you're still not going to get it to be where you want it to be, really.
yeah. I talk to people almost every day about, because I coach a lot of authors actually, like on how to, like, put their books together, package their books, publish them, and then we get into the marketing. It's usually the same conversation that I have with most people because the number one question they ask is, or they'll say, like, I've never marketed anything before. How do I market this thing? So I kind of I mean, I love the marketing part of it though, actually. And I still, like, to this day, like, I mean, I spend probably an hour a day just going through other courses, learning how other people are marketing, not just books though. It's like some of the other entrepreneurs that I follow in the space. And they're not even authors, right? So I've taken a lot of marketing frameworks and I brought them over into my book business, right? So what it really comes down to, without going too far down the rabbit hole with this, like marketing, if you can put it into two buckets, it would be traffic and offers, right? So it just comes down to a matter of like, I have to get well, let's say book, or I like to say platform. I have to get my platform in front of the traffic. So where's the traffic and how do I get it in front of the traffic? So that's why I created a newsletter, because I might be, to publish a book once every 3 or 4 months, even like that's a lot of work, right? So, but the books and the book platform, that becomes your offer. Now, working on courses and there's other products, and we have a Shopify store, so there's other things we can offer. But you need the traffic. You need to be able to bring the traffic over to, or into your email funnel. And so it sounds complicated, but it's actually not. You just need a content publishing system, right? So for me, it's just publishing. Back probably like, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years ago. I mean, I was barely on social media at all, except for maybe Facebook. But now, we're posting on LinkedIn and X to a certain degree, and doing a little bit of YouTube here and there. So getting building out more of those traffic funnels, because the idea is to bring them into the email funnel, where then we can offer them, the books and the courses and those things. But so yeah, having a marketing plan really just comes down to being able to finding your customers, where are they located, and then just creating content that you can put in front of them every week. So for me, like long form content for a newsletter, and then taking that newsletter and breaking it down to short form content, so you have something to publish every day. It's kind of actually, I would say, like, it's not my system per se. I'm actually learning from other people, like, who are showing me, like, this is how I'm building out my system. And like I said, they don't, like, some of them don't even have, they're not authors per se. So I'm thinking, okay, well, would this work for authors as well? So I like testing a lot of different things, like going and finding out what other people are doing. Do they have a course on it? How can I learn from their business model, and then bringing it into my business? And again, like, a lot of this is really testing it out as well. But what I figured out, though, is like what I found from this, doing all this testing, is that uh, there's definitely there's people out there who they need your message. They need your books, or they need your courses, or whatever it may be. But you have to be able to show them that you're an authority in that field. So I think that's what a lot of the like what I'm trying to show people is like, hey, if you want to build your own business, or if you want to build a great life, those kinds of things, like, I have the frameworks for that. And so I like to give people a little taste of that, and but anyway, yeah, the marketing side of things is something that it doesn't have to be that complicated. But what happens when you put a book out there, there's a lot of noise, right? There's like all these platforms you have to sign up for. You start to get emails from marketers who want to market your book for you, and if you just pay them $5,000 or $10,000 or whatever it is that they're charging. But the thing I always tell people is, like, the marketing might sound a little bit scary. You just have to take it one small piece at a time. I mean, there is a lot to it, and I don't have a background in marketing either. I'm just learning a lot of these things like everybody else, by following the people who have already done it, and then, just like I said, taking their frameworks, borrowing that, and then just applying it to my own business and modifying it. That's really, I mean, I think that's a good approach, because you might have a system for something, and I can copy your system, but I'm going to get a different result from that, right? So
I think that's part of the problem as well, because I mean, I've been down that road. I've copied loads and loads of different systems. It just never works for me. I mean, they're probably takeaways you can use for yourself, but you've got to make it fit your own business. You've got to make it fit your personality, and and the message that you're trying to deliver, the people you're trying to reach. So it's always got to have that little personal element to it. And for me personally, I find that it's just consistency, continually pumping out content, really. because a lot of the time, you have a lot of failures, essentially, a lot of stuff that just doesn't hit. Then you'll get one that's really good, and then it'll be back to not hitting, and then you'll get one that's really good, and you kind of have to navigate that. And I feel like consistency and pumping out, a decent amount of content really gives you a good starting point, at least, until you can kind of tweak and figure out right what's working and why.
Yeah. That's interesting. I think there's, I think one thing that gets in the way for a lot of people too is they just get overwhelmed with all the things you could be doing, like posting to social media and creating this and doing that and spending, and spending money, because a lot of these things are, people are going out there. I've done this myself, like all these subscriptions that we have, and it can really be endless. So um, I'll do an audit of everything. Like every 3 months, I'll go through and I'll just audit like the subscriptions I have, the software I'm using, and I'm just making the decisions. Like there's actually, I'd say, like, yeah, 20 or 30% of the things that I was actually paying for, I didn't really need. Right? It's just like when you get out there into the space and you start to, there's a lot of noise, but um, you just have to. I think if you're clear on what your goal is, then you are clear on what the tools are that you need, and then from there you'll end up finding, like I said, there's like 2 or 3 people that I really follow. Like I'm on their newsletters, I got their courses, things like that. There's probably a whole lot more out there, but and I've bought a lot of different courses and stuff like that because I think learning is great. But you really have to be careful of the shiny object syndrome, because there's a lot of shiny objects out there, and I mean I've chased most of them. So, um, but then later on, I was like, oh, I didn't really need another piece of software or that tool, or But that's part of the, I think, just that's part of the process, though. It's just that nothing is, you're not going to know what works until you've actually figured out what isn't working as well. So,
Absolutely, and I've been there. And the thing is with the shiny object syndrome, I think marketers, that a lot of them are so good at getting you to, buy into an idea, and it's only not until you sort of make the purchase or try the software that you figure out actually this is not really what I need. And oftentimes, I think where we go wrong is we're always looking to add something extra when sometimes what we need to do is take something away and
yeah.
simplify it.
Yeah, that's a great point, Ashley. Exactly. Yeah, I'm certainly guilty of that, like adding too much into the mix, becoming overwhelmed. And then when I get overwhelmed with all these things, it's like, okay, well, how can I? And I still try to make it work. It's like, how can I make all this work? Maybe if I put in an extra 3 hours a day working, and that didn't work out very well either. So um, yeah, I can't remember the post that I read recently, but that's actually what the post was about. Was not so much doing less, but taking more away from your, like taking, instead of trying to do all these things. And again, this is what happens with, if we go back to the book publishing business, this is what happens when you put a book out there, let's just say on Amazon. And, I've been publishing to Amazon for a long time as well, but go to Amazon, and what's on Amazon is your book and a million other books or products, or depending on what product you're putting out there. And then there's all different ways to market that. There's you have affiliate marketing, and so that's why I was saying, like, you really, if you're clear on what your goal is, then you can simplify things. And I think clarity is the key, right? But to get to that clarity, sometimes it's kind of like swimming through an ocean of noise before you actually get to it. But that's why I like to put pen to paper and just map out. I like to write everything out, like what exactly it is that I'm creating, how I'm going to create it, the tools that I need to do this. And when I'm clear on that, it's kind of like the 80/20, right? So that's my 20%, and all the 80, everything that's in the 80% circle. Um, that's all the stuff that I don't really need to pay attention to. I could be, and I might get some small result from that. But there are so many things in that 80% circle that I could probably let it, I can just ignore. So I actually, yeah, and I do this exercise too, where I'll have the two circles, 80 and 20, and then the 20% circle. Those are like the 2 or 3 pillar tasks that I'm focusing on every day or every week. So just being really clear on what your priorities are, I believe, like, if we can get clear on that, and maybe it's not three priorities, maybe it's just one priority, right? Because I used to think that I had to be good at everything. I had to be the editor and the marketer and the like. I had all these like, and those are all different skills, right? So when it comes down to the skill sets, and I believe in like skill acquisition, I believe is like that to me is like one of the most important things I can invest my time in, aside from my own personal development. But it comes down to when it comes down to skill acquisition, it's like, okay, well, what is it that I should be learning, and who can I hire to do this thing for me? Like, I want to be able to outsource it to somebody who has that skill for creating Facebook ads or Amazon ads or whatever it might be. Because when you try to wear all these different hats or juggling the hats, again, it just lends to a lot of chaos, both in your business life and your personal life. So I find it hard to really separate the two, actually. But maybe that's just the path of the entrepreneur. So
Yeah, I think that's a common problem, especially I take it you work from home a lot, Scott.
I do probably, in fact, 100%. Yeah, it's everything I do is on the computer. So that is a good thing. Love working from home. I used to have a corporate job here in Japan, and I left it about 5, 6 years ago, just before COVID, actually, to pursue, publishing full time and all that. But what I found though is like after I left my corporate job, about a year later, I missed it actually. Like I really missed going to an office where I was meeting people every day, as opposed to being online every day, or being just and talking to people for 4 or 5 hours through Zoom. Like I thought, staying at home and working from home and being your own boss, by the way, like that was the dream that everyone was pursuing. And I realized a few things. Number one, I'm not a very good boss to myself, so uh, and I still need help with that, Ashley, which is a good thing to recognize. And the second thing is, I don't think it's really healthy to be online all day in front of the computer for like 4 or 5 or 6 hours. Well, okay, maybe 4 hours, yes, but like there's a certain cutoff point where I realize I've just had enough, and I can just feel it where I'm working on something, and then my mind just wants to go wander, just like it wants to have some fun, actually. And I think you really have to take breaks, because working from home is great, but to your earlier point about working out and training and building in that time for yourself, I think that's the one thing that a lot of people they neglect, and they think, okay, well, after I'm done my work, I'll go to the gym or I'll go swimming, whatever it is. And I think we should start our day with that kind of thing, because it's just going to pump you up with a lot of energy. And that's the one thing we really need is it's not so much a time management problem as it is an energy problem. Because a lot of days I have like 8 to 10 hours I could be sitting in front of the computer working on this stuff. But I need to step away, brainstorm things on paper, and exercise and cook good food and take care of my health, because that's where the energy comes from.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, especially the in the creative realm. To be creative, if you were sat in front of a computer all the time and you just kind of glued in that computer, I think you just kind of burn out a little bit and you lose that element of creativity. I think we need to have that. We need to be moving around. We need to go outside a bit and have breaks and experience that allow. We need to allow space for that creativity, essentially, don't we? We need to allow space in our brains, because if we constantly, I'm doing this, I got to do this, I got to do this. For me, I don't know if you find the same, but it shuts my creativity off, and I'm just kind of locked in this cycle of just task after task after task, meaningless task, essentially at a certain
Mhm.
point when I'm almost burnt out, I guess. Whereas if I take a bit of time and allow myself a bit of space, that creativity comes flowing back.
Yeah, that's a great point. Exactly. So what I found, like I used to feel guilty if I took the afternoon off to go walking through the park. I think, oh, this isn't working. And, I'd be looking at all the other people who were wearing suits, and they were like on their lunch break from the office and stuff like that. And yeah, I used to think like, and don't get me wrong, I mean, like my business is doing well and making money and everything, but I still felt guilty if I was out there enjoying the day. And I realized, like, actually, during that walk in the park is when I had some of my best ideas. or just like you said, like going on a bike ride or doing those things. Like to me, the creativity piece isn't just sitting down and being creative, working on something. I mean, that is part of it. But a bigger part of it is actually what you're not doing when you're like outside, taking a walk, working out. I had my greatest ideas when I was on a bench press, like lifting weights and stuff like that. Um, so that is definitely something that we shouldn't neglect. Like we have to self care is probably the one thing that I was never very good at, but I had to really force myself. I still do sometimes. I have to force myself to say, okay, oh, time for a break. I've been at this for 3 hours now. And to your point, like if I kept going, eventually, like once I hit like hour 4 or 5, I was just burned out. Like there's no more that I could do. And then if you get into task switching, like if I try to do 2 hours of this and 1 hour of this and 2 hours of this, well, it just doesn't. I don't know. Like I mean, other people might have a different system that works best for them, but I find that if I can just spend one day or 2 days just working on the one project, I get so much done in probably like 2 or 3 hours of just hyper focus or laser focusing, or doing the deep work actually. you know, um, Multitasking, which I used to think is something we had to do to be productive. As it turns out, that's not a very good strategy for productivity or creativity. Um, and it's still a struggle because I have, even on my computer now, I have like multiple tabs open for all these different things. And so I just have to be aware of the fact, like every time I look at an open tab and my temptation is to click into it, every time you do that, it steals a part of your energy, right? So you've got to be very mindful of that. So now I turn off, like I'll get rid of all those tabs and I'll just have like the one thing in front of me that I'm working on, because like switching from one to the other, that's going to rob you of your energy faster, which means you can't, you know, work as long. And I think it's good if you can do like a 2 or 3 hour time block and then just focus in on that one thing, whether it's building your website, writing your book, whatever it might be. As long as you don't have to like task switch within that project, you're going to feel a lot better about the work you're doing. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And the tab thing really resonates with me. So I've got 6 open at the minute. Let me look at my phone, because on my phone it's even worse, right? When I've got so many things that I've kept that I want to do or look at. 122 tabs. I don't know when I'm going to get to any of them, Scott. But I could completely agree with what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a nightmare. You save things and go, oh, that would be really good. I'll come back to that. I'll do that. Or I need to do that. But there's so much out there. That's why I think we got to remove some of that noise and kind of focus in like you do with your 80/20 kind of setup, and focus on, right, what's actually going to move the needle forward? What do I actually really need to focus on? Because
Mm-hmm.
all this other stuff, it just becomes distractions, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. And interesting, one more thing I'll add to the 80/20 thing is like, um, just because something's in the 80% circle doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it or should be avoided. Like say, like email, for example, is in there, right? But I mean, I still have to check email. What happens though is like if I'm spending 1, 2, or 3 hours on it, that's a problem. But I'll take half hour out of my day where I have to go in and check email and respond to like some of them anyway. But the other thing is, one of the things that's in my on my list of 80% is actually scrolling through TikTok. Now I know, like if you listen to people like, oh, you shouldn't scroll through social media. We hear it all the time. You shouldn't scroll through Instagram and doing stuff like that. Sometimes, you know what? So I find really good stuff when I'm scrolling through. Like, sure, there's a lot of like dog videos and this and that and stuff like that. I love watching that too. But occasionally I'll come across something that's really useful, right? So I'll actually spend about 20 minutes of my day and I make TikTok videos, stuff like that. I create stuff on there as well, but I also scroll through the feed sometimes. And first of all, it's my escape route. So it's like when I break away from my deep work, that's kind of like my go-to thing. It's like, all right, great, I've got my 10 or 15 minutes for scrolling through TikTok. And but occasionally, like I actually find some motivational videos on there, or a framework that someone is sharing or something like that. It's really just a luck of the draw. But again, I guess what I'm saying though is like, if you have something where maybe you need to take 15 to 30 minutes out to go watch Netflix, or whatever your escape route might be, I think that's also an important thing that you need to do, just to shut off for a little while. So
Yeah, and it gets a bad rep, but TikTok can be really good for that. Some,
yeah.
just watch some mindless, good vibe videos that can really just kind of shut your brain off for a bit. Maybe have a little laugh or a smile at some things, and it can really help.
For sure. Yeah. One of the things I do every night, actually, before I go to bed is after I'm like, I'll meditate, have dinner and meditate, do some things. And then I will knock the night off by watching an episode of Seinfeld. So the show's been over for like 25 years, but it's just one of those things where it's like, I think everybody needs to have their, again, like their, maybe that's my nightcap, or just how I can just kind of end the day when I watch that. It's like, okay, great, put in another day, watch an episode of Seinfeld, and then I wake up early too. So I mean, I'll get up like 5:30, put in. I don't have so much of a. I mean, I kind of have a morning routine where I don't do. I wouldn't say like I do exercise in the morning, but I do deep breathing in the morning, try to get some sunlight in my eyes. What a difference that makes. I'll tell you, like if you can do some step outside and take in 30 breaths, and then if the sun is up when you're up and you can get some of that in your eyes, wow, like that'll really wake you up. I save working out for like later on. But that's how I start my day, and taking some supplements. And then I like to dive into one of my projects early before I start, like, coaching clients or things like that. So, but yeah, I love working up early, but don't like, I do have an alarm that goes off just because I'm, like they say you shouldn't have an alarm. And I agree with that. But I do have one just because I've tried it a few times, like not setting the alarm. And of course I slept in, but I think that if you want to wake up early, you have to go to bed early as well and set yourself up for success the night before. So
Yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't trust myself to not have an alarm. I love the theory and the concept, and to wake up without would be lovely, but I would definitely miss so many things by not having an alarm.
yeah.
But yeah, so it's about getting things right. I don't have a morning routine as such. Maybe I should, but I don't necessarily have one, and my mornings always look a little different. One thing I do struggle with is in the winter. So, and I think that comes back to what you're saying about the sunlight. In the UK, it's really dark and dreary and miserable in the winter, and it's dark until sort of 9, 10 a.m. half the time. So it's not great. Um, so I really struggle with that. That's something I need to do a lot more of. I take a vitamin D supplement to try and help me with that, because in the summer it's a lot easier. It's a lot easier for me to get up. I don't know what the weather's what the seasons are like in Japan, if you get much sunlight year round, or how it kind of works. How does it work there?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we have the four seasons. Where I live, fortunately, like, why I think it's fortunate, but we don't have any snow. Actually, it doesn't snow here. I'm more in the south, so like Kobe, Osaka. I'm in Okayama City, and then it's Hiroshima, so it gets a little bit cold. But we're talking like, I'm from the east coast of Canada, so cold back there is like, if it was like -10, you're having a good day in January. But we're talking like -20, -30, some of the temperatures, right? So much these days, a little bit warmer, I'm sure. But yeah, where I'm at, yeah, depending on, well, actually, if you were to come to Japan in the springtime, probably around, let's say April or May, we're looking at about, it gets to be about 20, 25 degrees Celsius. So I'm not sure what that is in Fahrenheit. We go with Celsius here, of course. But, in the summer, it gets up to around 36 to 40. So it gets really hot, and that can be really difficult to deal with, I think. But that's why we have air conditioning inside. And it's October here. And today was still probably a comfortable 20 degrees, 21 degrees, maybe, but yeah. And actually the place where I'm in, Okayama City, is considered to be the, what do they call it? The sunshine capital of Japan or something like that. I don't know if that's true, but we do get a lot of sun. So, but just growing up on the east coast of Canada, we did have of course we have winters. I'm sure they still have them, but I can't say I really miss the snow. I think when you're a kid, it's really good if you're, sledding and making snowmen and that kind of thing. But I don't do much of that these days. So I prefer to live in the tropics. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I think I prefer a sunnier climate, but what can you do? What can you do?
Yeah. The thing is, like, and I'm pretty near the airport too. So, like, if I get to the airport, I can be in like Okinawa, which is like I mean, it's almost as good as Hawaii. I've been to Hawaii a few times, great place. But I mean, Okinawa is like an hour and a half by airplane, maybe. So that's what I was saying. Like the transportation is just so convenient here. Like I mean, yeah, I mean, I have a car now, but I didn't have one for like a long time. But I didn't really need one. I was like biking everywhere, or if you have to go somewhere, like to another city, you jump on a train, and I mean, trains are everywhere. Trains and taxis, and so transportation is really easy, which is great for tourists. People come here. People come here a lot, actually. Like I see people from all over the world visiting, and so the tourist industry here is really, it's been booming for like the last decade or so. Of course, during COVID, I mean, like everywhere else, it was not so much, but everybody's come back now, of course. And so if you ever have the chance to come here, most people usually fly into Tokyo. They'll go from Tokyo to Kyoto, and then Kyoto to maybe Osaka. So it's kind of like a nice little loop there. But Kyoto is just amazing. I mean, there's the temples. Yeah, I mean, just the temples themselves are like these 1,000, 2,000 year old structures that have been there for a very long time. So when you go there, it's very historical, but it's definitely the one stop that I think most people usually go to. So,
Yeah, definitely want to check it out one day. It just looks amazing out there. The culture, the place. Some of the, like you say, the buildings and infrastructure. It's very unique, isn't it? And I quite like that about Japan.
Yeah, yeah. It's very. I mean, for the most part, I mean, I think it's. Yeah, the infrastructure certainly is very solid. If you went to the bigger cities like Osaka, Tokyo, even Kyoto, I mean, there's a lot of people there. So if you go into and there's a lot of people you're at as well. I mean, you go into the train station, and like it's very easy to get lost there. There's levels upon levels, and like if you don't know which train you're taking, you're usually like I've been here for like 25 years, and I still get lost all the time. So yeah, yeah, but yeah, it's fun. Yeah, so. Um, but when I've moved here, though, I mean, I just moved here with like I mean the thing is I had a company that brought me over here. They set us up with a homestay and a car, and my job was basically just to go to these companies like Panasonic um, or some like Mitsubishi, for example, like some of the bigger companies. I would just go there and teach their employees business English. Like that was like what I did for a good many years, and I really liked it because, I mean, and I don't have a background in education, by the way. My background was in electrical engineering. So I quit that job. I was brought over here just because for the fact that I could speak English, and that was really it. The interesting thing, though, is like I was doing pretty good with the electrical engineering job, but when I came here, um, like there were a lot of jobs actually for like English teachers, so it was really easy to get a job here, and the salary, like in comparison, because you could also have a lot of private students as well. I ended up like doubling my salary overnight, just like so I didn't have a reason to go back. I mean, after my first month here, I was like, yeah, I'm going to stay here. So I just did everything I could to stay here as long as I could. So of course, there's always the visa problem. Like I had a working holiday visa when I came here. And then after that, I had to get a working visa. But to get a working visa, you need a sponsor. And getting a sponsor is not easy, but I did manage to find one. And then once you get a working visa, and with that, eventually I got married. So I had a marriage visa, and then I had a permanent visa. So um, now I have a permanent visa, which pretty much means I can work anywhere and do anything I want. So that's a nice freedom to have.
Yeah. How did you adapt to the difference in culture out there when you first got there? Was that a steep learning curve?
For me, actually, I know, like, I mean, when I came here, I mean, yeah, I met a lot of people over the years, and people just adapt to it differently. Some people didn't adapt to it at all. Like some people are just like, I hate it here. I can't wait to go back home. I could never understand that because I loved it here, and I mean, there was nothing wrong with back home. I mean, I love my country. It's just like, but I just had such a great setup, and I don't know. Yeah, yeah, it really depends on the person. I mean, if I had any issues, it was, I don't know. I think yeah, like adapting to the work culture can definitely take takes some getting used to as well. But again, that comes down to the individual, I think, and the probably maybe the past experiences they've had. Like my working culture. I mean, I've always used to working hard. I mean, back when, I mean, back in Canada, back in the day, I think I've been working since I was 18, and I'd done a lot of jobs. So I was very conditioned to putting in long hours, hard work. So adapting to that here, because they're also used to doing that as well, long hours and hard work. So that didn't bother me so much. And again, I just love the traveling. I was always meeting new people, trying new things. So yeah, for me, like adapting to the culture here, I'm not saying it wasn't challenging, but it wasn't. I think that's the reason I've been here. One of the reasons I've been here so long is I was able just to adapt to it a lot easier than other people who, a lot of people came, they come here and they already had a plan for going back home. Like I'm going to stay for a year or two, or, but I don't know. I just wanted to see like, how far can I go? Like how, like if I go back home, I mean, I can go back to my, the way things were. And, I didn't want to go back to my old job either. Like I was done with that. So it's like, I'm not going to go back. That's kind of like going back in time. So the only thing to do is keep pushing forward, and that's why I stayed. And that's why I started my, the publishing business. Like I didn't want to teach English forever either. I wanted to pursue my, I guess my dream of doing this. And again, there are no guarantees. There wasn't any of that, but all you can do is you have to start. You have to go for it. Just have to put yourself out there, I think, and keep working on your. You got to keep working on your thing. If you really believe in it, whatever it is that you're working on, whether you're writing a book, building a company, I mean, you name it. Maybe you're battling a disease, right? But I mean, whatever it is, you have to confront that thing, and you just have to keep working away at it like day by day. So.
Yeah, I think going back home thing is a safety net, isn't it? I think people have that, they feel safe in that place where they're from. Everything's how they remember it, etc.
Mhm.
Whereas if you're in a new place, new culture, you constantly every day having to learn new things or adapt to something new, and it just keeps people out of their comfort zone. And people, for some reason, always want to revert to that comfort zone. I think it's a natural human thing, but to keep
Mhm.
pushing yourself and keep putting yourself in uncomfortable situations, it takes it takes a certain type of person, I guess.
Mm. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, and I get it. Like, I mean, people have family and a reason to go back, or they want to finish their education, whatever it might be. I mean, I did a lot of traveling too. Like, I would go to like Thailand for weeks, or Vietnam, or these other countries. And what I found is that didn't matter where I went, I started to pick up on things with the culture. Like the Thai culture was interesting. There's like of course like completely different culture from Japan, and but if you stay there long enough, you start to pick up on things like the way they do things. So I found myself just kind of like the chameleon. I would start to change my colors, and the next thing you know, I'm starting to kind of do things the way that they're doing it. And I'm sure like I never lived there, but if I had, I think I could have adapted to that culture or another culture as well. I can't speak for other, like there's maybe other cultures where that maybe that isn't the case, but yeah. But I mean, to your point, maybe that's just who I am. I don't know, but I also find that to be exciting. Like to me, like I want to try these new things. I want to feel challenged. I love living in uncertainty, and I love that comfort zone. By the way, yeah, very nice place to be. But if I'm there too long, I start feeling lethargic, lazy. I feel like something's missing in my life, and I feel like I need to be challenged. So that may be a good thing because it keeps me looking for new opportunities, actually. And I like that. Like just like there are no guarantees with anything, and like, that's always been the case with pretty much anything that I guess tried. But I think the only guarantee is that if you don't try something, and if you're afraid of failure, well, if you don't try it, you're going to fail anyway. You're going to fail by default. So I say, like, if there's something that you want to do, whether it's move to another country for a little while, learn a new language, or whatever it might be, like the only thing that's probably holding you back is the fear that you may be thinking, oh, it's not going to work out. And again, like, you're never going to know the answer to that until you actually go for it. And you might fail at it. And that's okay, because I failed at a lot of things. So I'll probably have more failures in the future. But when I do, it's like, okay, well, I probably, I could have done this differently. And then I'll just look at how I could have done it differently, so that the next time that thing comes up again, I can probably just avoid it, or maybe take a different approach to it. So I always think about, what's the name? Edison, like the 10,000 light bulbs, and I always wonder, like, at what point did he actually think, I think I've had enough of this? Like, was it number 1,000? Was it 5,000? Was it 9,900? Where he's like, nope, this isn't going to work. I'm going to go build something else. And if he had, maybe somebody else would have come in and finished it off, but he stuck with it, because, and again, I don't know what was going through his mind when he was working on this, doing that, but I'm sure that, he believed without a shadow of a doubt that he was going to make this thing work no matter what. And maybe that's why, so.
Yeah, it's a very entrepreneurial mindset, and it what you've just described to me there about about yourself as well. The the ability to adapt to different situations. That the lack of happiness when you're in a comfort zone, especially for a long period of time. And I think that's kind of where entrepreneurs differentiate from other people, where generally people will be happy. They'll build their life to a particular way. They'll have a reasonably good job, a family, a home, and that'll be them. They'll be content. Whereas I'm not content that way, and I can tell you're not content that way. You always want to be looking at more, and testing yourself or trying new things. So, and I think that's very entrepreneurial, really.
Mm. Yeah, that's a great point. It is. I mean, I think when I was, when I moved here and I was teaching for a long time, one of the things I did, I was teaching English like in many situations, right? But the reason I did it for so long is because every 2 or 3 years, I would go to a different school or try, like there's always a different challenge, right? But after 2 decades of that, I'd done just about everything actually. And I realized like I can't go any further with this, and I know people who have been doing it for much longer than me. And I knew it was time to move on to the new challenge, which was this. And then I started publishing books. And then eventually that became a little bit repetitive and I got bored with that. Now I'm still doing it, but I'm doing other things, right? Like we talked a little bit about the marketing and my approach to how, I'm, doing the marketing differently and, publishing books in a different way. But I always have to be like, to your point, I'm always looking for a way that I can do it differently, because without that, when something just becomes repetitive, it's like over and over and over again. Yeah, that stresses me out actually. Like I start to think like, okay, what's the purpose of all this? So to keep that purpose very clear and alive, I have to be working on, new things and trying new things. And sometimes these are like doing things that other people haven't tried before. So some people have said to me, well, that's never been tested before, like so-and-so tried it and it failed. And it's like, great, well, I'm going to do it then. So, so I don't know. I think my approach to this is like, if everyone's going left, I'm going to go right. So.
Yeah, I'm very similar. If things become too easy, you can just get really bored, distracted, and you drift elsewhere, and you want to do something else essentially. But I have been there. What does success look like for you then, Scott?
Success for me is about having the freedom to live the life that you. Okay, let me frame this up. Having the freedom to live the life the way that you want. But that sounds a little bit generic though. So for me, it's time freedom, having the freedom to spend your life your way, which could be doing a lot of traveling, building products. I love building products, and just creating things and being able to put them out into the marketplace. And having a challenge, like just being challenged by things that would normally, like they might be scary, that's like, but again, it's like living on the edge of uncertainty and overcoming those challenges, and because the thing is like, setting a goal is a good thing. I love setting goals, but I used to think it was all about getting the goal, but it's actually like who you become on the journey, like to get that goal, if that makes sense, right? It's like, so for me, like success is just about becoming the greatest version of myself. I'm not sure what that is yet. I mean, I have an idea, I have a vision for that, but I think that's what the journey is just discovering who you are on the way, and yeah, if I can wake up every day and just, do my best, help a lot of people, and do the work I love to do, to me, that's, I think, and taking care of your health as well, mental, physical, and spiritual, I think that's success.
Yeah, and I think that journey that we're on, that we're all on, really, is kind of finding ourselves and kind of figuring out where we are and who we want to be. I think that never ends. To be honest, I think we're always on that journey. I think there's no actual finish line for that.
Yeah, no, it never ends. No. For me, like, okay, the concept of retirement, to me, retiring is just retiring from the work that you never want to do in the first place. So if you're doing something you love, there's no such thing as retirement. I can't imagine like just completely stopping working at 60 or 65 or 70 and just saying, okay, that's it, I'm done. Because to me, like, and I know, like, there's a lot of people out there that are retiring from their careers, of course, but I often wonder, like, and they talk about playing golf and stuff like that, and I think that's great, but I don't know, like, it's like I can't imagine just never working again. Even if, like, I mean, maybe some people retire and they're working on in their gardens or stuff like that, keeping busy, which I think is a really good thing. I think it's important to be learning things, like what's the next skill that you can learn, so I love learning new skills, because if I learn a new skill, maybe that means I can build a new business, and like who knows where that goes. I can teach these things to people and do workshops and that kind of thing. So anyway, that kind of ties back in with this, with the whole success model, as well as like, there's just, like, to your point, we're never finished with life. And I think, I don't remember who said this, but when I get to the end of my days and I, skid into heaven or wherever it is that we're going, I want to be able to go there like, just, I'm totally used up, washed up, there's nothing left, and that's it. It's just like, and then maybe off to the next adventure. Who knows? So.
Yeah, I love that. It's a bit like a sports analogy, really, to leave it all on the field.
Oh yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Leave it on the field. Don't take anything with you.
yeah.
Um, Yeah, I love that. We've spoken a lot about being in comfort zones and putting ourselves in situations where we step out of that comfort zone. So I just wanted to ask you, when's the last time you truly felt uncomfortable, and what did you learn from that?
Really uncomfortable. Mm, I'm gonna say, let me see. Probably just back. I think back in 2020, I had quit my. Yeah, actually, you know what? After I left my corporate job back in 2019, it's been about 5 going on 6 years now. I didn't feel uncomfortable at first. I felt relieved. Like I was like, so just, I felt like I was starting a new journey and, going out on my own. Um, but a year later, I started to have this really like deep regret. Like things weren't going very well with the publishing. In fact, I'd come up against a wall where I hated writing. I thought I wasn't going to publish any more books. I was done. This everything just like, I wanted to actually go back to my corporate job. And after sitting home for a year on Zoom calls all the time, I was like, I can't do this anymore, because I really miss going into the office and talking to people. And I just felt like, if I can't go back and get my old job and I can't continue with this, I mean, I was really in the land of nowhere. And yeah, it was very, very uncomfortable, because I didn't know what else to do. So what ended up happening, actually, I did go back to my company. And this was really just after COVID kicked in as well. And I went back and I was like, I went back to the company. I was like, hey, how's everybody doing? Just came back to visit. And by the way, you know, is there any positions open? They're like, oh, we thought you quit. And I'm like, well, I did, and I said, yeah, I was serious. Like I was going to go back and get my old job back. Well, it turns out that there was another guy in my position, and I was the manager. I was running this business school and everything, so it was a pretty good gig. But there was another guy in my position in my chair, and I realized, like at that moment when I saw that, it was just like this crushing blow. Like I just went home that day thinking, how am I going to continue forward? Like I don't want to do this, like the publishing thing. Just I don't know. I just felt like it wasn't working, or like I didn't want to do it anymore. So I basically stayed that way for the whole year, and coming out of it though, I went through a bit of recovery, I think, where it's like, maybe I've got one more book in me. And I just sat down and I wrote one more book. Business was pretty much at zero by then. Like I think I had like almost like no income was coming in because I had basically stopped marketing the books and all this. But I put this one more book out there, and unfortunately, like it kind of started to take off. And then, that pumped a little more energy into my day, and I started to work on more material. And then I started to gain a lot more momentum. And I was still, like I wasn't in my comfort zone. In fact, I was very much out of it. But now it was different. It's like I felt like I was doing something that I was doing the one thing that I should have been doing like years ago, like when I left my job, like a year and a half or 2 years ago. So when it started to take off, I was like, okay, maybe this is a sign that I'm not supposed to go back to my old job. And so I just ran with it. And by the way, what happened about a year later, actually did end up going back to my old job, just part-time, just to kind of like, I went in on the weekends just to help out a little bit because I felt like I had to do that. I just like, it felt like there was something unfinished there. So I was doing that on the weekends, still working on my book business and doing everything else. So I kind of had the best of both worlds. And, but yeah, I don't know. Like that was also a very scary place to be, like in that place of like, I wasn't just like outside of my comfort zone. I was in the land where like I wasn't being challenged by anything. I didn't know which direction I was going to go anymore. I couldn't go back to the way things were because I'd given that up, my own choice. Right. And now I was kind of like out here, not really sure what I was going to do with the rest of my life. And I look back at it now and I was like, I'm glad that happened actually, because there was certainly like whatever lesson was there for me. I think I was being challenged to see like, could I actually make this thing work? And it did, and there were other challenges along the way, by the way, like for the business. I mean, do it coming back to like being your own boss, your own manager. Well, as it turns out, when you start your own business, you also have to do your own taxes, and that was a big experience. Because that is definitely not the thing that I'm good at. So I had to find an accountant, find somebody who could actually manage that side of my business. And fortunately, I did. But anyway, that's a different conversation. But anybody who's looking to go that route, just be aware that you are going to be challenged. Like the biggest challenge you're going to come up against is yourself. Like that's what I always found. Is like at the end of the day, I'm probably the biggest bottleneck to everything. So I always look at it this way: as like if I'm struggling with something, it's like, okay, what am I doing or not doing? That's keeping me stuck. In this place. So that's always it seems to be always the problem, but then the solution is always right there as well. So.
Absolutely. When you start your own business, you got to be a generalist. You got to be good at everything, right, at the start, especially when it's just you. So, and I think that's what a lot of people overlook, and a lot of people think, oh, I'm just going to go and do this thing that I love. Well, actually, there's all this other stuff around it that needs to get done somehow as well.
Yeah, for sure. And you have to realize, like again, like I'm fortunate that I have people looking after that stuff for me, but because I'm just like, when it comes to putting the taxes together, the receipts and all that, again, there are certain things that you have to finally realize you'll never be good at it, like that maybe you shouldn't be. Right. So I'm glad I have other people. Like, I mean, I do have to put some effort into that, but at the end of the day, it's like, it's good to have, building out like a small team for yourself, definitely something that's recommended. I believe in like solopreneurship too. I mean, I love that whole concept. I have like I have one virtual assistant. My partner runs the financial side of things, and then we have an accountant and stuff like that. So it's a small team. I'm going to be adding more people onto the team as we grow. Um, but just like building out the systems for your business is really important, and that's probably the number one. Like I'm always working on playbooks, building systems, doing the things I actually like to do. I actually enjoy doing those things, and the things that I don't enjoy doing or shouldn't be doing, I make sure that I can outsource that to other people. So because that's just going to buy back my time and my energy. So.
Yeah, that's one thing I was going to ask you actually, Scott, about virtual assistants, if you use them or not, and what's your experience been like of using virtual assistants?
Interesting. So I came across an article written by Justin Walsh recently about micro outsourcing, and this was interesting because I used to think that um, I've hired a few in the past. I have one that's part time now, but I used to think that and by the way, like we'll be hiring an administrative assistant probably in the near future, somebody who can oversee a lot of the operations. That's probably going to happen next year. But when it comes to virtual assistants, like I hired a couple of people this year, and I think it didn't really work out, but it wasn't really their fault. I think that I wasn't setting them up for success because I was giving them too many different things to do, right? Like one person, like this virtual assistant was doing the email, and she's doing like the creating the content for the newsletter. Like I just had her doing all these different tasks, which I realize now wasn't really a good idea, because ideally, and this is just coming back to the article that I read, is like um, Justin Welsh recommends just outsourcing, like having 3, 4, or 5 people doing these micro tasks, right? Hire someone for your email, hire someone for like whatever it is, like just make a list of these things. And then you can just hire one person for like 5 hours a week for that one thing. And they're just responsible for that one thing. So moving forward, that's my new approach to hiring virtual assistants, not hiring one person, expecting them to do all this stuff, because my experience with that is that it never worked out very well. First of all, like, every time you like a virtual assistant might, like anybody, they probably have 1 or 2 really good skills, but you give them too many things to do and they're overwhelmed. They're going to try and rush through it, and it's just not, just not going to get it, like good quality work done. So, and the other thing too is, you have to give them proper training. You have to have playbooks built out. Like I'll actually spend half hour to an hour a day, just like when it comes to training, meeting them like on Zoom, on camera, walking them through the process for something so that they're clear on everything. We record the call as well so they can go back and refer to it. But you do have to train people as well, and probably training people is not that may be something that that I'm not that great at, I think, all the time. So I'll train my virtual assistant to do these things. And then if we bring someone else on board, then your other assistants can train the other people coming on board. So ideally, I think, if you're building out a team, that's how you want to try and structure it. So that, again, so that everything's not falling on your shoulders. So.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. That's something I'm looking at the minute, Scott, to be honest, is getting a VA to help me out with some tasks. So that's quite good advice for me as well. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's a process. I mean, like I said, I've hired quite a few people in the past, but I think what holds a lot of people back, though, like a lot of entrepreneurs, myself included, we try to do everything, right? And I still try to do everything sometimes, but it's like, okay, wait, I can't do everything. Who can I outsource this to? And hiring a virtual assistant, I mean, is a good idea. It's just that it's a lot more work than just outsourcing a project. So I use Fiverr, sometimes Upwork. I use Fiverr 90% of the time. It's really, I have a team on there where I do my covers and formatting, and like I got somebody on there who can create marketing materials, everything. So that's really easy. I don't need a virtual assistant for that. But the things that are like sucking up my time, I'd probably recommend this for people, is just like, make a list of the things that you're doing every day. And I realized, like, wow, I was spending like 90 minutes a day in email. Do I enjoy email? No. Should I be doing this? No. There are some emails that I do have to respond to. Like I get emails from publishers all the time, and I have to, like I have to communicate with them. but 90% of the emails are just, I shouldn't even be looking at them. However, we're so, I think we could become so accustomed to doing this, like we just lock ourselves into these things thinking that we're the only ones that can do them. So again, I would just make a list of all the things that you're doing, identify the things you hate doing, but that need to be done, right? So they're important, but they don't need to be done by you. And then when you bring someone on board, you walk them through what that system is. So
Yeah, I'll definitely gonna have a look at that. I've used stuff like Fiverr and Upwork before for certain things, but yeah, I'm a bit lost when it comes to VAs. Never used one before, so I'm just on the fence about finding a good one.
yeah, the
Finding one
thing is,
for the tasks I need.
yeah, and I think it's like it's good to test people out too. Like when you bring someone on board, just give them a project first, or give them a task, see how it goes. Give them another one, and just kind of like I was kind of like throwing all this different stuff at people, and it just led to confusion, right? Instead of just giving them one thing at a time, let them get good at it, and go to the next one, right? And you can tell after a few weeks, I think, if someone's going to work out or not, like especially when it comes to the communication style, and just having really good tools to communicate with, whether that's using Asana, Slack. I found like I was communicating via email, which is the worst way to be communicating with somebody, I think, because then you get this long conversation, like it just doesn't work that way. So I found like Slack or Asana was, especially Slack for sure. I'd be using that with my. I mean, I use it now for two different teams, so but yeah, just having the communication channels open, being clear what the goals are for that week as well, and make sure that they're on board with that and they know what the goals need to be met by the end of the week or the end of the month, so that everybody's on board. So yeah. But that's why I'm always working on playbooks for the business too, not just for myself, but so that I can, when I bring people on board, I can just, we've got a playbook with videos and resources and things like that. It just makes the onboarding a lot easier. So
Yeah, absolutely. I'll have to have a look at that, definitely. Um, where can people find you, Scott, if they want to find out a bit more about yourself or they want to get in touch with you?
for sure, they can find me at scottallenbooks.com. If they go there, that is our Shopify store. And yeah, still building things out on there. Of course, got a lot of big plans for the shop. We're gonna have merchandising up there and stuff like that. But yeah, they can find me there. They can go to Google and they plug in Scott Allen Books or Scott Allen Interviews. They can probably find. I've got a ton of interviews up now. So, and also have a Linktree website as well. We can drop that in the show notes maybe. But yeah, Linktree's got. I love Linktree because it has a link to like the websites and all the interviews I've done. Everything is right there, and so I think that's a great little site. So yeah, they can also utilize that. And if they want to reach out to me, they can reach out to me at hello@scottallen.me or scottallen@scottallenpublishing.com.
No problem at all. I'll make sure that we get them links in the show notes for people just to make it easier for them to find you and figure out how to get hold of you. Um,
Fantastic.
I'm going to bring this interview to a close, Scott, but are there any final thoughts or anything that you want to leave us with?
Yeah, I mean, if people are, it depends what you're working on or what you're working towards, but I think it's really important to just be clear on not just what your goals are, but like ask yourself questions. Questions are very powerful, right? And I remember, I mean, just going back to I mentioned Tony Robbins' book Awaken the Giant Within, and one of the chapters in there was on the power of questions. I don't remember the name of the chapter, but it was on like how powerful questions are. So ask yourself a lot of questions, right? Um, am I happy doing what I'm doing? Can I see myself doing this a year, 5, 10 years from now? What is it that I really want to do? Like go back to your childhood and just take a look there, because you'd be surprised that a lot of the things that when you talk to entrepreneurs or creatives or people who are doing the thing that they love doing, a lot of them said that they were actually doing these things back in childhood. Maybe they stopped doing it and they got into, they maybe went to school and they started down a different path, but eventually they came back to doing that thing they always wanted to do. So be questioning everything, like, Because if you're not happy, well, there could be a lot of reasons for that. I don't know, but I just found that the goal isn't to find happiness. By the way, the goal is to, like for me anyway, just coming back to like what my version of success is. I think my goal is to be showing up in the world. Um, I think adding value and helping people as much as I can. And that can work for anybody, you know. I mean, whether you're taking care of your family or you're trying to build a business or you're in a job and you want to succeed in your career. But just be very clear on what it is that you really want. Because, and the other thing is, don't. It's easy for me to not easy for me to say this. Like it's easy to say, but it's hard to do. But don't settle. Like I find that a lot of the times, like, you know, I always settle for things like, oh, this is as good as it's going to get, or, well, I'm okay making this salary. It's, you know, I mean, it's a lot more than other people are making. Like, um, I used to think that way, and I find that it's very limiting, right? Like, I realized, like, I was always afraid to tell people, like, I want to be rich someday. And people would look at me and go, whoa, that's not a very good thing. It's like, well, why not? Because I think money can be freedom. And it's also, you know, you can also use that money to help a lot of other people. So now, like, whenever people ask me, like, you know, what do you think about wealth? I'm like, oh yeah, like I want as much of it as I can get, but not just because I want to put it in the bank. Anyway, that might be a different conversation, but I would just challenge people to, you know, do that one thing that you've always dreamed of doing. And you may think you don't know what it is, but I bet you most people out there, they know what it is. They've just been switched off for a very long time. So turn the switch back on.
Yeah, we settle and accept things, don't we, and settle into that comfort zone again. Like we've said before, we're just kind of happy with what we know and that little shell that we live in.
For sure.
Scott, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me on the show. It's been great.
My pleasure. Take care.